Okay, so here we jump into Torah Yud Gimmul, and we look at Ois Hey, where we were yesterday speaking about the tikkun, the rectification of the Merkavta Ilan and Merkavta Tata. We spoke yesterday in Ois Hey about the bechinas of Aryeh, Shar, Nesher, Adam, Ifanim, Kisei, and the Adam Ayoshev ala Kisei, and how all of those elements are present both within the technique that the tzaddik is using to relate to the people that he is trying to heal, as well as to the Torah that the tzaddik is then drawing down from that realm after he elevates the nefashos. So then he descends with brand new Torah. We learned that in very, very deep and incredible ways yesterday. We were learning about all of this. So just to review very quickly, the Aryeh is the aspect of the collection of the bitter souls, right? The Nafsha Marala, the Bechina of Mara, right? The bitter Nefesh. And Arisi, Moiri, Imbisami means to collect. And so Aryeh is the aspect of the way that like Keach Nefashis Chacham, the tzaddik is collecting all of the souls, bringing them together, demonstrating for them who they really are, like we learned. And then the Bechina of Shar, Ra'ah, that was Arisi, Moiri, Imbisami. Right, that it's just an expression negatively on the surface, right, of something very holy that's inside, which is an impulse compelling the person to seek wholeness, right, and to seek holiness, and to seek to fill that void with kedusha, right? Unlike what we learned in Torah Ches, where a person fills their void with a ruach sa'ara, right, the ruach of the Rasha, or the ruach of Esav, which only lasts lefi shah, but it doesn't really fill a person. That's not an MO, right? A person can't build their life around ruach ra, right? It doesn't do anything for the person. But the tzaddik demonstrates what you're actually looking for is holy ruach, right? What you're actually looking for is bisamim, and that's what you have inside. It smells good. It's a good smelling thing, and the tzaddik looks past the surface of the mara and he sees that mari im bisami. Then bechina shar is that the tzaddik helps the person to recognize that for themselves, that it isn't just enough that they should hear, but they should see it. They should really feel that way. Nesher is the aspect of the ischadshus, right? That this is how you're able to bring a person to the aspect of renewal, apropos for this month, right? Chodesh Aviv, the whole world is renewing itself now. And the Adam Shabanefesh is who this therapy works for, right? So we have Aryeh, Shar, Nesher, and for whom is this therapy relevant? The answer is Adam, right? Generally, everybody. Atire, Miskene, Nasa Adam, Itzalmenu, Kidmusenu, wealthy, meaning the Gedolim, and the Miskene, the Bechina of the Ketanim. There's nobody who's not going to be rectified, who's not going to be impacted beneficially and positively through this particular form of the therapeutic nature of what the tzaddik is doing, and how the tzaddik is helping the people that come to him. Vahifanim is the aspect of the bodies themselves, which are also impacted, because the body is the revelation for the nefesh, as we learned, and we learned that that's true relatively speaking, right? So that which is nefesh vis-a-vis the guf is itself going to be guf vis-a-vis a deeper nefesh, and that was arisi moiri in besami, right? Where the aspect of a nafsha marala is the bechina of guf, right? Klape, that which is really powering that, right, bitter taiva, which is of course the besami, right? Which is the aspect of the holy desire, like we learned yesterday. And then a person comes to the kisei, which is the nefesh of the chacham, as we learned. And then the adam ayushav al kisei is the das. And we said that all of these four aspects, or how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 aspects also relate to the Torah itself. We have the Aryeh of Torah, Shar of Torah, Nesher of Torah, Adam of Torah, Kisei, the Yoshev al Kisei, and the Ifanim, right, as the Rebbe reveals over here, without going into all the psukim now, that connect each and every one of these elements to the Torah Kedosha in and of itself. And that tells us that as the tzaddik goes through the process of Lekeach Nefashis Chacham, of collecting, so to speak, the souls, rounding up the troops, building the A-team, right, like he's doing over here, demonstrating how every single person that comes to him is part and parcel of the Jewish story, how every single person that comes to him is not chutz miklal. There's no such thing. Haisi asatzam in a klal. Right, but we have to include him in the klal. We're coming up to Pesach with the Russia and all the various Torahs that are written about the Russia, the Manashtana, Avata Haki, Ashinav, many different things, right? On one level, we'll say just 2 interpretations now quickly, right? That the Russia thinks that he has to bite everybody all the time, right? Because he thinks he's a Russia. This is what Rishaim do. And somebody gave him the label as a Russia when he was a child, and he walks around biting. And Haki Ashinav, we say, chill, you don't have to bite all the time. Haki Ashinav, not to knock out his teeth. You blunt his teeth, you say, actually, you're very sweet. and actually you're not a person who bites people. So you got this crazy idea into your head, right? But the truth is that you're holy. Or, like the Belzer Tzaddikim say, Avatahaki Ashinav, you knock out the shin within him, right? Meaning you allow him to get in touch with the shin, as we're going to learn over here in the context of this very lesson at the bottom of the Amud, that the shin has 3 prongs, right? Which is always a reference to the Avos HaKadoshim. And you show this person, you have a kesher to the Avos. Avatahaki Ashinav, you knock out the threefold nature of his spiritual essence. You show him you're also holy. And you have the DNA of Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov inside of you. And we know the Svarim HaKadoshim say that the numerical difference between Rasha and Tzaddik is the word Shinav. If you're able to bring out the shin, you're able to change him from Rasha to a Tzaddik. There are a number of other interpretations as well. But that's basically the idea, that as the Tzaddik goes and collects the people, and he helps them see the goodness inside of themselves, and he helps them renew themselves, which kind of person? All kinds of people. Memela, that's going to enable that person to draw down Torah. Each and every step in their life is bursting with meaning, where they recognize that this is all part and parcel of the unfolding of the Hashgacha Pratis for their own life and their own enlightenment and their own clarity and their own growth and their own learning and their own development and evolution. And this is part and parcel of what the Tzaddik is doing as he brings these nefashis up and he draws down Torah. So we jump back in. We're sort of in the middle of Eis Hey, but it's a short little paragraph that begins with the words V'zeh shemevi. There's on Daf Yud Ches. I'm an Aleph. So he says like this. This is the depth of the Gemara in Tainus with a certain Rabbi Yoina. When the world would need rain, when there was a drought, Amar, he would tell his people, go and buy me a certain kind of grain, which is called Ibura, with a zuz. Very simple coin. Go and buy me Ibura. And they would go, and he was basically trying to get them out of the house. He was basically trying to divert them and divert their attention. And when they left, he would stand in a very deep place, in a very hidden place, and he would cover himself with sackcloth, and he would daven, right? And the Gemara says that why would he stand in a deep place? Which is a bit interesting because it seems to be pashup shot if you look in the Mefarshim, but the Pasukim say the Pasuk says Mimamakim Karasich Hashem, I called to you Hashem Mimamakim, and the Mefarshim say Mimamakim is Meim Ke'alev, right? It's not like, but he went to a physically low place, like he actually went into the Mimamakim, right? And he found a low place to go. I used to do a spodidus in the forest or a Matashkol, and there was a certain dip, and I used to do a spodidus in the dip, in the ditch, or it went down because this Gemara Mimamakim, right? So you go to like the low place. If you're ever in a place that you can have in the lower place, you go into that place. Mimamakim michsisaka, and then va'idei asamitra, and then the rain fell. Okay, I never caused the rain to fall with my spodidus, but this is Rabbi Yoina. So it doesn't have to do with a deep place, apparently. You also have to be a tzaddik. Okay. When the world needed rain, what does this mean? It's a reference to the Torah Kedosha, when there was a necessity to draw down new insight. There's a necessity to draw down new hayra'ah. We know that Torah isn't just like Torah, it's guidance, right? It means hayra'ah. It's this that Kodesh Baruch Hu is trying to communicate with us. When the world needs more Torah, we know that the Torah is associated with water. In Mayim al Torah, in this pasuk, is a very clear connection between the Torah Kedosha and rain, right? Yarv kamatar likhi, the Torah will come down. Likchis ki lekach toiv nasat lechem, Torah siyal tazovu, right? Lekach is Torah, and it's going to come down yarif, like in a very, like the Gemara says, it breaks the necks. It comes down very, very, very strong. Kamatar. Amar Rabbi Yoina said, "Eizva'is b'zuzi bura." Go and buy some grain called Ibura with a zuz. What does this mean? Ibur zabachinas ayin beis and reish yud vav. Ibur, or it's also the letters of the word eruv, right, which is more explicit, is gematria. Well, has the letters ayin beis and then the letters reish yud vav, right? Ibur. Well, Ibur doesn't quite, but so right, exactly, with a yud after the, which by the way in the word eruv you generally have, right? Ayin yud reish vav beis. So you have av and reish yud vav. Av is gematria chesed, and reish yud vav is gematria gevura, right? Which is very beautiful because that means that the word eruv, which connotes the mixing of two things, you always fundamentally, at least relationally, I'm sorry, I meant to say relatively, you always have in any mixture the Binah of Chesed and the Binah of Gevura. Otherwise, you couldn't have distinction. Right? So that means that any two things are going to take on the characteristics, one of Chesed and one of Gevura, even in relative terms, if you have two different forms of fire, right? So that's already, both are Gevura, but relatively speaking, in order for there to be a distinction, there's got to be a spectrum. Otherwise, they're not different, right? So that means that the spectrum is Chesed to Gevura. The spectrum is the Kav Yamin and the Kav Small. That is the spectrum. And so any mixture of two things already has within it, numerically, Chesed and Gevura. Says the Rebbe, what's that speaking about in this context? Ayin beis ushikuch. Ayin beis, we learned in the beginning, is the ruach of Mashiach that's coming into the lungs, like we said in the third line of the lesson. Rucha nachas the shakech chamim b'deliba. There's a ruach that comes into the lungs to shakech, to calm the fire of the heart, and we learned that ruach was connected to ruach nediva. That was connected to the concept of chesed, right? And that leads to the Binah Beis Hamikdash, right? And that's called mishiyesh b'deya. Kilu nimna Beis Hamikdash b'yama v'ani b'rev chazdecha ava v'secha. That's what we had learned earlier on. So the ayin beis, the Binah of Chesed here in the word ibura is the shikoch, and what's it coming to calm, right? Like ki'ilu, cold air or water, right? It's coming to put out the fire. So Reish Yud Vav is the Binah of Gevura, because Chesed is always the aspect of water. Avram Avinu is associated with water, right? Yukach Lamhat Mayim, we learned that in Torah Yud. And Reish Yud Vav is the Binah of Gevura, is the Binah Cham Imos. That's the aspect of fire, that the water, or in this case the Ruach, is coming to put out the fire. Bizuza, and he tells him, okay, the Aisi Ibura Bizuza, or Bizuza Ibura, is that the process of Ayin Beis Chesed and Reish Yud Vav Gevura is playing out in the field of Zuza, which is money. So Bechinas Tavis Mammon, right? That's called, because there could be many aspects of a fire for a type of millions of types, and you can put it out with every kind of ruach. Over here we're speaking in the realm of Zuza, of money. Eli was saying, come and let's see how to put out the Taivas Mammon. And he stood in a deep place. What's this aspect? Through putting out the Taivas Mammon with the aspect of the Ruach Nediva, by acting with benevolence, by extending oneself and going beyond one's natural inclination to give money and to donate and to support. So through this they were zoche to the aspect of chesed. And what does chesed have to do with a deep place? So we know, the Gemara tells us in Shavuos with regard to tzaras, right, different kinds of tzaras, the white tzaras, right, in different aspects, is kamara hacham amuka menatzel. In that context, the Gemara tells us that sunlight always gives off the appearance of being deeper than shade. That if you have patches of sun, hopefully today will also be a sunny day, and you have the sun shining through leaves, if you take a look at it, it can be illusionally or optically, it can appear that the patches of sunlight are deeper, lower down than the shade. And that sunlight, which is we're learning is deep, is the aspect of chesed. Chesed u R Yaakov. Chesed is sunlight. In the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will command His chesed. Another source that's frequently brought for the connection between chesed and day is Vayashkem Avram Baboiker. The Zohar Kodesh says, Dad Boiker da Avram. Right? Boiker da Avram. Avram Avinu is connected to the Boiker. The nighttime is connected to Gevura, it's dark, right? And the sun is withheld, and it's not a time for growth, and things are wilted, and the flowers close up in the nighttime. But the sun comes and everything blossoms, everything opens. Sun is the aspect of his spashtus, of chesed. So once a person is zoche through this bechina of aisi ibura bezuza, which is ayin beis reish yud vav, so that means that the chesed comes and is mishakech the chamima de liba, and that's the reish yud vav bezuza. With regard to taivas mammon, a person zoche to asra amiki, which is sunlight, which is chesed. And when that happens, you know what happens? Then chesed zacha lebchinas habayis. Then a person is zocha to the bechina of the Beis Hamikdash, like we learned in the pasuk that I mentioned earlier. Va'ani b'rev chazdecha avay beisecha. When a person has the chesed, that brings a person to the aspect of the binyan habayis, which is the bechina of das, like we learned. Ki das bechinas bayis, like the Rebbe said there. Kol mi sheyesh b'deya ki ilu nivna Beis Hamikdash b'yamav. Whoever has das, it's ki ilu that the Beis Hamikdash was built in their day. V'zehu asr tzniya. And this is the aspect. The Gemara says it wasn't just a deep place; it was a private place. It's a hidden place. Beis HaMikdash. That's an aspect of the Beis HaMikdash which is very hidden. Shu HaSeichel, which is the aspect of the intellect, like we learned that a person who has das, the whole Beis HaMikdash was built in their day. What's the kesher between Seichel and Snias? Kamay Shekas, it's a pasuk, ve'est snuim Chochmah. That people who are tsanua, they're hidden away. Yaakov Avinu is Ishtam Yoshev Ayhalim. He's sitting in the tent. He's hidden. The Pnim, Yaakov Avinu consciousness is focusing on the Pnimius, on the Seichel Sheyesh Bichal Davar, right? That's hidden within everything. Ve'est snuim Chochmah.
How do you know the Beis HaMikdash reflects Chochmah?
Because the Gemara in Brachas told us that Kol Mi Sheyesh B'Idea Ki Ilu Nivna Beis HaMikdash B'Yamav. So there's a kesher between the two. And he would cover himself with sackcloth. This is the aspect of the ability of the Chacham to lift up the nefashis of the dar. Why are the nefashis of the dar called a sack? Because we learned earlier, if you remember, going back up top, that the Chacham is the bechina of, and the Rebbe said over there, is the bechina of yakar mi pninim. Right, that's the Talmud Chacham. That's the aspect of the kisei, because the Talmud Chacham is hidden. And we learn, and the Rebbe said over there, "V'chol nefashis nasin." I'm just going back to the top of the page. Levushin etzla. All of the nefashis of Klal Yisrael are levushim. Meaning the Chacham is the pnimius of the whole klal. Is the pnimius, the interiority of the klal. Everybody else is the bechina of garments, and we're going to learn this later in Torah Chav Beis, B'ezras Hashem, where the whole nation is garments to the tzaddik, right? And again, it means metaphorically, right, and metaphysically, you should say, or spiritually speaking, that the concept of a garment being that which clothes or that which enables to reveal, right, the body, which is what it is, right, it covers over for the sake of being a mode of expression, especially when you speak about uniforms, back when those things actually meant something, right, and it wasn't just people copying other people, which is what it became today, but it used to be that people who wore fancy clothes were wealthy and people who didn't wear fancy clothes are not. Now it's the opposite. My kid Shmuel saw a picture of Elon Musk and he was bewildered. He said he's the wealthiest man in the world and he wears a t-shirt and a baseball cap. I said, yeah, because it's Olam Hafachar. You see, sometimes you see people who wear all these fancy clothes and usually it's a symbol of the opposite. But people who actually have money don't dress so fancy. Right, okay, anyway, so uniforms used to mean things. Huh? Yes, right, exactly. Well, Elon Musk, it happens to be, doesn't. By the way, he's a very much Yetzim and Haklal. Yeah, I would say Yetzim and Haklal. Yeah, but probably just for convenience. I don't know. Apparently he lives in a very simple house.
He has it because his time and he can't fly commercial time.
Yeah, that's what I said, for convenience. But he's maybe he's Yetzim and Haklal. But good morning. But
I'm saying the picture with Zuckerberg with Gates, and everyone's saying they're wearing $10 stuff. What's it called?
Yeah, okay.
Nonsense.
Fine.
Gates dug out a whole mountain for his house.
Fine. Okay, I was just focusing. Nachon, so I was just yes, Nachon. Okay, let the record show that they actually have very fancy houses and boats. Nachon. I'm talking about their outfits for now, right? That clothes, right? Used to mean something, right? Used to mean something. Even, oh boy, here I got into dangerous territory. Even religiously, clothes used to mean something, right? If you dressed like a Ben Torah, you were usually a Ben Torah, right? Today we made it standardized for everybody, and it means nothing anymore. Okay, anyway, just had to put that in there because I feel strongly about it apparently, and like I feel strongly about many things. And kings, right, used to wear, meaning live, and it's very deep why this happened. Without getting into it, it's a bechina of malchus to sitracha, right, where malchus stopped reflecting the pnimius. I don't want to get into this whole thing right now. I'm trying to bring out one point because garments are always malchus. So that getting into the whole thing. Rabbi Yochanan Karla Ma'ani Mechabduse, right? The Gemara Shabbos, Rabbi Yochanan would refer to his clothing as that which honored him, right? Which is the bechina of kavod and baruch shem, like we learned in the previous lesson. Kavod is always associated with malchus. Kavod malchus adam vayet. Malchus used to be reflective of something pnimi. Now it isn't, right? But that's what a garment used to be. If a person, and today still you do have, right, firefighters wear a uniform, you know that there's a firefighter, meaning the chitzonius is supposed to reflect the pnim. That's how it's supposed to be when things are healthy, right? And so I'm just trying to explain the metaphor of what it means. What's that? What does it say? L'chavod v'l'sifares, right? What's sifares? Sifares is kutchabrichu, it's tiferes, and kavod is malchus. Exactly. That the Shechina used to reflect the kutchabrichu. There used to be yichud kutchabrichu shchinta, which means yichud pnimius and chitzonius. That's what it says about the big dekuna. L'chavod v'l'sifares. It used to be reflective of both, right? Today we have a situation where it's not, right? So in a situation where things are proper, it's supposed to be that the tzaddik is the das of all of Klal Yisrael, which is this, That the tzaddik is, and all the Yechidei Adairos, these unique tzaddikim, the Moshe Rabbeinu tzaddikim that changed the whole world forever and ever, were the pnimius, were the kudshabrichu kiviyachol, right? Were the tifares of Klal Yisrael, and the rest of the Am was supposed to be the garment for them. I'm just explaining what the Rebbe means. The rest of the Am was supposed to be that the das of the tzaddik, right? They said the Geulah never left his room maybe for like 20 years. He was as sum Chochmah. People, the tzaddikim, in our times of Chaim Kanievsky, they didn't travel. They sat where they sat, but the whole nation is supposed to reflect their das, right? And instead, you had people coming to the Rav Chaim Kanievsky in order to get a bracha out of him. They would take off their watch, and they would grow their beard, and then they would walk out, and they would shave their beard, and put on their watch. This is not what it used to be. It used to be tzaddikim said, because he didn't like when people wore watches, and he didn't like when people shaved their beard. But, right, so it used to be that... Huh? Okay, yeah, there are many other such things. It used to be people mamish did, das Torahs. No such thing. It used to be that people mamish lived with the tzaddikim. They lived with them. By Hasidim, you still have this kind of thing. There it has its own klipa, its own issues. But this is how it used to be. So in an ideal world, this is how we're living. And the Rebbe is going to say this much more explicitly in Chav Beis, where he says not just that Klal Yisrael is a garment for the tzaddikim, that he says over there that the tzaddik is the bechina of nefesh and Klal Yisrael is the bechina of guf. Right? Which means that we're supposed to be guided by this consciousness, by this intellect. Okay, and that's what the Rebbe means over here. Sorry, I went on such a long thing for that, but if it's not absolutely important, let's try to save it, okay? Fine. This is the aspect of the tzaddik who's wearing a sack, right? In a sackcloth, meaning in what context is this true? Because the tzaddik is elevating the nefashos. That's what it means, right? He's wearing the clothing of Klal Yisrael Asher B'cha Aspire. The bechina of beautiful ksenes pasim, right? The beautiful multicolored garment of Yosef HaTzadik. Came as adonimis mishakya denachla, because they are drawing on what's called the shakya denachla, the waters of the and the watering of the nachla of the stream. He's able to water them. He's able to shine them. He's able to cause these souls to sparkle, and that's why they're called a saka, because shakya, because they shine. And then after that process of going through the whole inyan of needing to have drawn down Torah, and then using chesed ayin beis to calm down the reish yud vav, which is the bizuza, which is the taivas mammon, and the koiba asri amiki is that he's zeicha to ruach nediva, which is chesed, and then asri tzniya, that brings him to the inyan of the Beis HaMikdash, and through this experience of elevating the nefashos, having michsei saka, so then he's bringing down Torah from beyond. And the Rebbe sees the whole structure that he built hinted in these four lines, which again is absolutely unique. You don't find this in other Sfarim. Other Sfarim, if you look at which are commentaries in this Gemara, will explain it locally, or will explain it based on pre-existing Torah thoughts. And now that we have this Gemara here and that Gemara there, this is a reference to this. Only Rabbeinu HaKadosh is revealing novel structures that never existed before, and then utilizing those structures to reveal novel interpretations of the Gemara. To my knowledge, there's nobody else that did that. Nobody else that did that. Everybody was using pre-existing ideas, and even Reb Tzadok HaKohen, who was a little bit close to this, was doing it locally. He was finding one, like for example, in Sigzat Tzaddik, everybody wasn't weaving together many, each with its own novel interpretation and building a brand new structure. Again, it's not a matter of better or worse. I just haven't seen another tzaddik that's capable of doing that. Here we come to Vav. A person needs to see, look at this. A person needs to seek very much this kind of chacham, because it isn't simple. That a person needs to daven, that they should get close to a tzaddik. A person needs to daven, Hashem should help them connect to their shirish neshama, whatever that might be. A tzaddik who knows how to elevate souls. That can elevate them. And that can bring down into their life hayra'ah. And most people don't appreciate the importance of a tzaddik, because most people don't appreciate that there's anything to avodas Hashem beyond just on the surface. And so most people are not looking for their souls to be elevated and for Torah to be revealed in their life circumstances, because they don't necessarily consider that to be part and parcel of avodas Hashem or religiously relevant. And so it's like we're 2 stages removed, because it's not enough that people aren't connected to tzaddikim. They don't even know that it's important to be connected to tzaddikim, and so certainly they're not going to daven for it, right? And they're going to think is talking about Shemayim Esrei, and al tzaddikim is maybe speaking about, maybe I should be a tzaddik, or I should get Gan Eden with them. But it means v'simcha kedu imaya, it means let me be one of the anshe shlamenu, let me be a chassid, let me be connected to a tzaddik. Because I realize that my nefesh needs elevating, and I'm not okay just to carry on in the service. I'm ill, and I recognize that I need help, and I'm capable of asking for help, and I'm capable of being vulnerable, and I'm capable of recognizing that I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And it doesn't matter how much information I learn; it means there's something more to Yiddishkeit than just the words on the page, and I'm missing that. So a person who's in that consciousness will be able to daven to Hashem in this way and beg Hashem, please, let me find this chacham that can elevate my soul, the Yala Isam, the Yedidim Torah. Because it's not so simple, says the Rebbe, to do this process. Because even if the tzaddik has one kind of seichel, that's not enough. Because there are 2 very specific types of expertise, 2 sichliim. Number 1, he has to know how to collect the nefashos of all the people that are coming to him, and how to bind them together. That's one kind of seichel. And this, that he's able to elevate them above and then draw down Torah in their stead, whose seichel acher is a completely different kind of seichel. And these 2 sichliim are referred to in the shin shal shloisha rashim, vishin shal arba rashim. This is the aspect of the 2 shinin, right, on the tefillin. On the one side you have a shin, which we referenced earlier, with 3 prongs, and the other side you have with 4 prongs. Why? Why is the Rebbe utilizing the shin shal shloisha rashim and the shin shal arba rashim to refer to these 2 sichliim? You have to be mizbayin in a little bit, but it goes back to the beginning of the Torah, and it was in a kuta that we went over very quickly, so don't expect you to figure it out. If you remember, in the beginning of Eis Dalet, if you look over there, the Rebbe was speaking about hashkacha, and he connected the hashkacha to the tlas gvana de'ena and the bas ayin, right? The 3 colors of the eye, right? And then the pupil of the eye. And we said that this is connected to Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, and then David. So the shin shal shloisha rashim, the Mefarshim explain, is Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. Right? That's the aspect of this, that the tzaddik is able to just pull together all different kinds of Klal Yisrael. That's Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, right? That's the whole spectrum. And if you want to go back to the beginning of the Torah, which is reflected now in what we had just learned from this little Gemara in Tainus, you can learn that this is the aspect of the Eruv, right? Of the Ayin, Beis, and Reish Yudavav, which is the beginning of using the aspect of Avram Avinu and that energy to cool down the aspect of Yitzchak Avinu. When you bring them together, that's Tiferes, right? So that's Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov is the aspect of collecting the nefashos. Elevating them and bringing them down is the klalius, or say the shleimus of hashkacha, and that's with the bas ayin, right? And that's the pupil, and that's David HaMelech, right? And so that's the shin shal shloisha rashim, and then the shin shal arba rashim, as the Mefarshim explain over there. And this is the explanation of Rabbi Bar Chana, where the tzaddik, the Tana says, those who travel and the seafarers, I believe they're called, told me the following. They said, they said, we've seen waves that between one wave and the other was 300 parsas. And the height of these waves, plus mea parsa, was also 300 parsa. One time we were traveling in a certain pathway through the water, and one of these waves lifted us up until we were able to see this star, this what's called the Marbata de Kochva Zuta, this tiniest of stars, which was the Avikim Mivza Arbin Griva Birza de Chardala. It was like a place where you can plant, I think it was 40 sa, let's see, the Bizar Bezer Arbin Kur, a 40 kur of mustard seeds. It was tiny space. If it would have lifted us any higher, we would have burned up, from the atmospheric air. Was so the star was so powerful that this wave lifted them into such a high place they would have just burnt up. And then we heard one wave say to the other, and it was calling out over, as the Rashbam is going to tell us, over 300 parsas, so it must have had a very loud voice, and it hollered out to the next wave, my friend, mi shavkis mida ba'amad le'shatvis. Is there anything in the world that you haven't destroyed yet? You know, you're so powerful. They were like, they're so powerful, these waves, 300, parsas high. And he says, if you didn't destroy anything, and nothing's left, I'll destroy it. Amrullah, and the wave said back, Puk chazik virta demarach. He says, come and see Gevurta Demarach, the strength of our master, which is obviously Hashem, where even one grain of sand we're not able to pass, meaning that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu set we're going to make a bracha in the morning, right? In the Birchas HaShachar, which of course is going to elude me now. HaKadosh Baruch Hu set a boundary for the water. What are the words? It's in Birchas HaShachar, I believe. Anyway, okay, we need a sitter. Anyway, it's not important now. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it that the water cannot pass the breach of the beach. The Medrash tells us this is the aspect of why Klal Yisrael is nimshal both to the Gechavim as well as to the Chol, right, and to the sand. Why? Because all the Mayim Rabim Layuchel all the Mayim Rabim, which I spoke about recently also in a shir, that is the Galuyos, the exiles, right, of Rome and Bavel and Yavan and Madai, which is where Shetevas Rabbis Bnei Yissaschar tells us they can Harasham Kiyam Nigrash, like the ocean, but the sand holds them back. They can never overwhelm Klal Yisrael. Shenemar ha'oisi le'siruna Hashem. Hashem says, whoa, you're not going to fear me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I put a boundary here. Nobody crosses. Let's see the Rashbam, very mysterious passage, between Geulah legala, between wave and wave, mishum dekamrina b'samach b'ram gala gala lechaver, yitztich lashmina demlosh shlas meis parsi shma kodesh shachaver. Like I pointed out, because we're going to say later on in the passage that one of the waves called to the other in order to demonstrate the greatness, meaning the size, right, and the enormity of the waves. We're telling you how distant they were from one another, that their voice was able to reach from one wave to the next over 300 parsas. Tilin and Gala lifted us up. Yosim Shir Gavai Hishlich Lamala Ad Rakia. It lifted us way higher than the Rakia. Inami. Or Havla the Rakia Nafish Ad Malach Kriv Latufkov Shana Sheish Min Rakia La'aretz. The Gemara tells us and elsewhere, right, that between Aretz to Rakia is a mahalach of 500 years. 500 years up to that place. And that's where it lifted us. Marbata, Shchiva, meaning the place where it rests, the resting place of the Kochmah Zut, of Kochmah Katan Shebekatanim, of the smallest of small stars. Bizra, base Zera, right? So Bizra is like a conjugation between these two words. Base Zera means a place to plant, of Arba Imkur Shal Chardal, of 40 core of mustard seeds, and Afishim Mikol Sharzuram, which are teeny, and they're the smallest, right? And it was a very, very, very small area, and that was how tiny that star was. Maklin and Mehavla, Nisrafa Michaim HaKoichav. If he would have lifted us any higher, we would have burnt up from the heat of the star. V'ramali Gala, Nasan Koilei, right? So one of the waves lifted its voice, Kalemar Tzak, and it screamed out, Kidug Mastahim Al Taim Kar the Kol Tzadirecha, like we already learned elsewhere, right? Deep calls to deep, Kar the Kol Tzadirecha. V'shama HaMalacham HaMamunim Aleim. And these sailors, not B'Shama. B'Shema HaMalachim HaMamunim Aleim Heim. Right? It could be referring not to that the actual waves called out to the other, but we know that everything in existence, just like we say, every blade of grass has an angel upon it. Right? That's Makkah and says Gadal. No, the Malachim are calling out to the other, and they're saying Shavkis Mida Ba'alma B'nei Shegbia Kol Kach. You're so powerful and you're so fearsome. Maybe it breached the water, right? As we know, okay, it could be a tsunami can, right? But this kind of wave apparently cannot. And it breached that thing, and it shut off the whole world. Right? As a result of the sins of the generation. So this wave answered back, and he says, Hashem has not given me permission, even with all of my strength, to cross that boundary. It's just like a string, a tiny string. I cannot extend myself past the beach. The Gemara is telling us, right? That the fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this, that Hashem sends boundaries, is going to prevent the water and this wave, fearsome as it may be, from breaching and from destroying the world. Says the Heilige Rebbe Nachman, what does this all mean? Likutei Moharan is referring to those tzaddikim who are drawing down water of Torah down into the world. Nechusei Yama. Nechus means to go down. Nechus Darga means to descend. Yama, right? They're trying to bring down Yam. They're trying to bring down the waters of Torah down into the world. Between each wave and the next is Bechina Shin Hanal, is the aspect of the Shin Shal Shloisha Rashim, right? Which is the Bechina of the first Shin that has three heads, right? Which is the Avos, and that's stage 1, to be Meshakech, the Chamim Liba with the Ruach of the Tzaddik. And that's the Bechina of the 300 parsei. Of course, Shin is Gematria 300. The Rubi the Gala, and the elevation of the wave, which is the Bechina of the Chochmah, of the Seichel Sheni of the Tzaddik, that's able to take these nefashis and elevate them above and then draw down Torah, which is the Rumi the Gala, right? Which is the way that the wave is being able to elevate itself up to the Shemayim and descend, is also Tlas Meis Parsei, Bechina Shin Shnia, which is the second Shin of the Bechina of the Shin Shal Arba Rashim, right, which is Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, and then with David, which is the drawing down of the Ashkach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we learned. Hanabachina Shnei Sichli Manal, which are the aspects of the two Sichliim, the two kinds of Seichel. Seichel Shal Kibbutz Nefashos, that's Seichel number 1, gathering the souls together. Seichel Shal Aliyas Nefashos L'Hamshach Torah, and then drawing down the Nefashos with the Torah that comes with them. Like we learned, these are the two aspects of 300. So it's 300 between Gala and Gala, and it's 300 high. And the waves in this context are the souls of Sali Koilech Bas Galim. HaKadosh Baruch, the pasuk says, "Rejoice, let me hear your rejoicing voice, Bas Galim," which literally means daughter of waves. But as the Medrash tells us, the Gemara tells us, Galim is a reference to the Avos HaKadoshim. She Bas Avon, right, which is the aspect of David, Malka Meshicha, which is Klal Yisrael as they are rectified using the processes of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Memela. So then David, which is Malchus, which is all of Klal Yisrael, is is Mamish David, and that's Bas Galim. And this is Bas, right? Always a reference to David HaMelech, the daughter, the aspect of Malchus. And that's the Bas Galim. And Ben Gala Legala Elah Chachamim Shem Ben Gala Legal. These Chachamim, the Nechusei Yama, are Bein Gala Legala. They are traveling between wave to wave. What are the waves? Are the souls. And they're binding them together. They are bridging the gap between one Gal and another Gal. Like we said, right? That's the aspect of the first Shin, 300. This is lifting the souls, is the aspect of another kind of Shin, the Shin of Arba Rashim. One time we were going on the way. The tzaddikim entered themselves into the avoid of zivug, which is nikra oirach, which is called a way, my way and my sleeping place, which is a bechina of zivug, like we learned previously, right? Mita is a bechina of zivug, sleeping is the bechina, right? Virivi of sleeping is the bechina of zivug. So we went to be mazavig, the nefashos of Klal Yisrael, and elevate them back up to their source. We elevated the nefashis very high up. The tzaddik has, the chacham has ascended the city of warriors. Until we saw this marbata the kochvizut and shagarmu zivug ailah. We caused this elevated zivug between Kodesh and Shchinte. Shchinte being Malchus, Malchus being Knesset Yisrael being the souls of Klal Yisrael that the tzaddik is here to rectify, one of the manifestations of the Shechina. Marbata is a bechina zivug kamashakasav. It's the same word, archi v'riv'i, right? So marbata the kochvazuta. What's kochvazuta? Says the Rebbe Nachman from the Zohar Kadosh in Parashas Balak, Daf Kuf Tzadi Aleph Amud Aleph, is a reference to the Shechina. Shchinta nikres b'shas zivug, it's called Koich V'zuta. In the Shas of zivug, it's called a small star. Kamuva b'zayir isavidas nikuda z'ir migoyrechimta. It is called a a nekuda zira, a small point, migayrechimta, out of the heat of the zivug of the love, kedei nischaber b'bala, and it makes itself very small, and it's mischaber b'bala. That's the bechina of humility that enables HaKadosh Baruch Hu's energy to come down into a person's life. When a person makes himself into a koich v'zuta, just a small star, not a full moon, right, but just the bechina of very, very small, then it becomes a receptacle, a vessel to receive the light of the sun, to bring it into the state of godless. Ayin Sham. So that's the Shechina. And it was the size, like we learned, of a space where you can plant 40 kur of mustard seeds. And it's brought in the Zohar Kadosh, and the Gemara brings this as well. I believe it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, which speaks about a certain kind of deer, which is of course metaphorical because there's no such kind of deer, but metaphorical. Abra. This animal, this deer, when it goes pregnant, is statmis, its womb is closed up, and it's not able to give birth. A snake comes and it bites the deer in the place, right, of the womb. And then blood starts to flow, and then the space opens up, right? And the snake eats from this blood, and because it bit that place, it causes the muscles to spasm, whatever it is, and then the birth is able to happen. Says the Rebbe, so we see over here, this is the aspect of what's being referred to. Because V'zebechinas Bizra de Chardala. This is the aspect of the Bizra de Chardala. What's Bizra? Rashbam told us Bizra is base Zera. So he says that's the reference to this inability for there to be a birth, right? Where these nefashas are not being moiled Torah. These nefashas have their besamim, meaning they have their beauty is locked up inside of them, and it cannot be born. It's a base Zera. De Chardala. Chardala, we know, is a bechina of tipas dam kechardal, nida, right? Bechinas tipas dam kechardal, which is the smallest drop, makes a person, makes a woman a nida, right? And that's referring to the blood. The nafik bineh machmas and ashicha bebeis hazer, because the deer was bitten, right, in that place, and that's causing the chardal the blood to flow kechardal. Bizra perish Rashi, we said already from the Rashbam, is beizera. And then she gives birth. This aspect is the Torah. And it travels for 40 days. Which is the aspect of the like we learned over there, the 40 kur, right? That's what it was. Shem arba'im asar l'chol star, and this is the aspect of the merkava that has 4 on each side. And we know that every time you have 1 in kedusha, you already have 10, right? Because 10 is the 10 spheres. So you cannot have a davar shalim without a bechin of 10, right? So every 1 is 10. And so that means that if you take all the 4 sides of the merkava, this is the bechina of 40 kamuvasham, the bechina is arba'in griva. This is the 40 kur, bechina is arba'in cheva. So these are the 4 animals. Shem arba'im yom shel Torah, which is the aspect of the Torah that's given in 40 days, because this is the tikkun of the merkavta ilah and the merkavta tata. We're just going to go a little bit quicker, because I want to get to the end. The Torah Yedal, we can start fresh tomorrow. Let's try to cover as quickly as we can the next 5 minutes. And then she says, the seafarer said that if I were lifted up any more, I would have disappeared. The pasuk tells us, Rebbe Nachman has a very beautiful teaching on this entire Kuvtes, which we're going to see by Ezras Hashem. There's a hevel that happens on the earth. There's a pasuk in Kehal. There's an absurdity. That's what the word hevel means. A vanity. It's an absurd thing that you find, right? That there are good people that bad things happen to, and there are bad people that good things happen to. That's a hevel. Gam's a hevel. How are you going to figure that out? It's an absurdity from our mind. Says the Rebbe, how many people have gone away from Yiddishkeit as a result of this hevel, right? Where you're trying to tell me that there's a God and that there's a plan and that everything is with a cheshbon, and how could this be mechushban and coming from a benevolent being when it seems like a biggest ivus hamishpat, right? I mean, this is the problem of evil. And like I was explaining to somebody, a very sweet Jew, I was speaking to on Sunday morning, I was explaining to him, people have to understand what monotheism means, and I've spoken about this also in the past. It isn't just the belief in one God, right? It's the belief that literally everything comes from one source. And I told him polytheism is much more intuitive. Polytheism is much more intuitive. It makes much more sense to say that there are many warring gods, even though philosophically it's a challenge. I'm not getting into that now. But it makes much more sense, because then I could say that the good things come from a good God and the bad things come from a bad God, and there's no rhyme or reason, and it makes much more sense. Monotheism, all of a sudden, you have to account for this, that it comes from one source, and How could that be? How could that be that good? That the same benevolent being that's supposed to be good to the good and bad to the bad is good to the bad and bad to the good. All right, so Rabbim Nispakru, and they went to polytheism because of this. SHIURIM Sadik V'Ralev V'Rasha V'Toivle, because they saw, there's the famous question, right, that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to figure out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only let him see the kasher of tefillin in the back, but not the front. Many people were thrown off from this. Sadik V'Ralev V'Rasha V'Toivle. But once the nefashos are elevated, this is the deepest thing in the world, you have to know how to read it. Once the tzaddik does this therapy, and he enables this person to say all of your negative taivas are actually the expression of holy desires. All gufim are actually the expression of nefashos, and you have to look deeper beyond the surface. And they come to realize that their whole journey was Torah, that their whole journey was Hira, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with them every step along the way, and that everything was leading them to this moment and this clarity and this elevation. V'idolinan harbi nefashos, right? Idolinan tfei. As I bavadi have a maklin and lashon kula, it would have lightened the question, and they would have said, "Well, this that I thought that it's a rush, that it's tzaddik v'ralai, no, it wasn't ra, because on the surface it looks ra." But if a person's able to penetrate the depth of why it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us through what He puts us through, and you understand what it means to become a developed person and a person that stays in the game, and not like today, Chas v'Shalom, Nebuch, how many people weren't given enough strongly the message of Ein Shem Yush, that there's a whole conversation happening now around suicide, right, in the frum community, and that people are giving up, Pasha giving up. But people stay in the game, and they go through what they go through because they don't have an expectation of perfection. They don't have an expectation, which is not their fault, but it's societal, that we're supposed to achieve something. The expectation is toil. The expectation is Adam Amal Yula, not to succeed and not to be financially successful and not to be successful in any other way. The expectation is to be a soul on this planet and to go through what we need to go through. And we stay in the game. And all the while that a person stays in the game, because what can happen? If this becomes a norm, right, and the numbers that I've seen the past couple of days are not even to be believed. I actually don't believe them. I need to speak to people who can confirm that these are. We're talking about in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds in very, very short periods of time. Which lo yadea, could be it's true, could be it's exaggerated, but it doesn't matter. The point is that this concept can very quickly become a societal norm in a certain sense, and it can be seen as a viable option, which, by the way, is part of the conversation around assisted dying, right, and why that can filter down into the community in such a terrible way, where it becomes a literal viable option. People can check out, right? And if that becomes an option, so then all of life also, becomes what it becomes, and it's like, okay, it is like a virtual reality. Like if I want, I can stay, and if I can tap out. And you cannot tap out. You understand? You can't tap out. Rahman al but anybody, it's not an option. No matter what tsar people are going through, and I understand that it's not so much, usually a conscious decision, and that's why we sit shiva, because usually people are not well, but a lack of wellness usually comes from a societal construct and context, and we have to be making sure that we're sending out messages like these to just say the thing. Life is difficult, and we are sent here for tikkunim, and then if we can look deeper, and if we're given the das of the chacham, and that's why I say Rebbe Nachman is life-saving. It can literally be life-saving. I mean it in the most explicitly literal sense. Thank you. I mean it literally. I'm not talking metaphors and hyperbole. I mean it literally. We need this das in our schools. We need this das in our shuls. We need it desperately because people are apparently not getting the message. If a person is with this consciousness, then he sees the Ra and he says, I'm meant to be going through this. This is a tikkun for my neshama. I identify as a soul, not as a guf that's in so much pain that I can't bear to have it be conscious anymore. Chas v'chalila. Lashon kula mehavla mehevel hazeh. From this hevel, v'lo yahaya hevel hazeh kol kach kash ala olam. And it wouldn't be so difficult because you see that tzaddik is elevating souls. We're out of time. Okay, last 2 minutes. Quickly push forward. Because this is maybe the most heartbreakingly beautiful paragraphs in the whole Likutei Moharan. These next 2 paragraphs. So one of the waves calls out to the other and says, Chaverti, my dearest friend, have you left anything that you didn't destroy? I'll come and I'll destroy it. What does this mean? When the tzaddik is bringing down these fresh souls that have been clarified in the Binah of Ibur, which is Ibura, which is Reish Yud Vav and Ayin Beis. V'al Yedei Hiskalalos Aklalius Nitoisabam Avalas Elazeh. And these nefashos that have gone through the therapy of the tzaddik, they love each other. V'azma Orin Elu le'Elu, and they're giving each other strength. V'ayimrim Zelazeh Maskirin Zezeh, and they're reminding each other. Achi Shema Shavakt Eizem Mida Ba'olam Hazeh Shadayim Mishalos Alecha Ve'inati Yachal Es Gabrala. The tzaddik has showed us how holy we are. So is there maybe some kind of thing that you still Mida Ra? How can we live with Midas Ra? Got to work on it. And Adarabba, and they're saying it in the lashon of like, wow, if you became so holy and so elevated, like you must be the greatest tzaddik. So v'nesi ana v'nacharve, I will help you overcome it. Is there any midah ra that you still have left? Because I'm sure that there's no midah ra that you have left. If you were able to go up to Shemayim with the tzaddik, obviously you must be so pure. Maybe there's one thing you have left, and I'll come and I'll help you and I'll fix it for you. And the other wave says, my brother, look at how powerful the tzaddik is. Look at how powerful the I haven't even one grain of sand, one strand I couldn't breach. What does this mean, Pirish? Listen to these words. You're asking me, you're so holy, maybe there's one bad midah you still have? Listen to me, my friend. I'm still sunk down into all the taivas in the world. I am a lowly person. Theoretically, I should never have been able to have access to my soul, and have access to sweetness, and have access to the clarity of who I am, and access to what it means to be a Jew. Come and look at the strength of the Chacham of the Tzaddik. His strength is so deep and so vast. Even my soul he elevated. Even my soul. That you're asking me, oh, maybe there's one midah ra that you do. He says, brother, you don't know, I'm the worst of the worst, and I'm still stuck in everything that I'm stuck in. But the tzaddik is able to give us a taste of our souls by elevating us arisi moiri, and to take all of our mara nefesh and to help us smell the besamim behind it, to help us really identify with our holiness, and thereby to never, ever, ever, ever give up, to look beyond the surface of the things that we go through and to see the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in this way to unite the Merkavti La with the Merkavti Tata, and to draw down new Torah into the world, new Hara into the world, which is itself the Torah of Mashiach, the Torah Datikas Imam.
האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני